through the International Living Future Institute using their zero energy certification. And this is important because this certification has a big focus on how the building performs, not just does it check the boxes. It also it really aligned with our goals for a zero emission building because this standard does not allow combustion on site. So the building has to be emission free on site as well. So that's why we chose that particular certification. We also worked with our architects to go through the process to receive certification from the EPA Energy Star program, which is called the Design to Earn the Energy Star. And we will be using that data to seek actual certification through Energy Star as an Energy Star building. And we'll be working with the International Living Future Institute for at least a year after we're in the building and we're collecting data to show that our building meets the zero energy target that's required. So on to the next tip. Before investing in really cool, sexy technology like solar panels and a battery storage system, it's imperative to maximize efficiency in the structure. So building off of that last tip. And this brings us to pro tip number 3, which is pay attention to your building envelope and really maximize efficiency. We talk a lot, and folks who are involved in building efficiency issues talk a lot about how important the building envelope is, but it's a lot trickier than it sounds. It's really, and we found through this project, it's really critical to monitor and watch each step of the way to ensure that the building envelope is constructed correctly. And this involves different aspects of framing, window installation, door installation, all sorts of different penetrations that are made to accommodate plumbing and electrical wiring and all these kinds of things. So there's dozens, if not hundreds, if not more, opportunities to make sure that the building envelope is not being compromised. So and when we're talking about the building envelope, we're really talking about insulation and preventing air leakage through roof, walls, windows, doors, the foundation. This is critical, and it can make or break a zero energy building. So we knew we needed to get this right to achieve our zero energy certification for the Climate Innovation Center. So we did a lot. I'm going to try to simplify these steps. So first, we worked with a building envelope commissioning agent. This professional is also sometimes called a building enclosure commissioning agent. And this is a third-party contractor, a third-party expert who can watch all those dozens or hundreds of steps on site, come visit, provide site observation reports, and help really in the most professional way, hold the hand of the contractors who are actually doing the work so that the building envelope matches the targets that we have. And a building envelope commissioning agent is the kind of person that we worked with, and they're commonly used in the commercial sector. If you're looking at a residential project, there are a lot of energy raters who can play a similar role to that. And one important thing they can do in a single family context is making sure that your insulation contractors install the insulation to a grade 1 level of insulation. And that just means the insulation is installed according to manufacturer specs and to provide the optimal performance. So in addition to working with a commissioning agent, obviously we wanted to maximize insulation levels. We chose to go with an interior low global warming potential spray foam insulation, 2 inches on the inside, at least 2 inches, and then 4 inches of exterior rigid insulation as well. And there were numerous little areas that we had to make sure that that both types of insulation were done right. We also focused on targeting airtight construction. So the whole building went through a test to confirm that the building is as airtight as it needs to be. So again, there are dozens and maybe hundreds of little opportunities for air leakage, and the building envelope consultant and commissioning agent walked through and made sure those areas were also sealed correctly. So one thing we did is we used a fluid applied air and water barrier under on one of the exterior layers that was underneath the exterior foam insulation, and we had to make sure this was done so we could we had to make sure that was done right, so the air and water barrier was installed just in the right way around different flashings around windows and doors, and was continuous, and a lot of details that we really looked at that commissioning agent for. We also, I'm going to skip a couple of these, or just go a little quicker. There's something called thermal bridging. We need to avoid thermal bridging because thermal bridging is heat flow through building materials, and that could be through framing or that could be through fasteners. And so we were very careful to focus on eliminating thermal bridging in our window frames, in the fasteners for insulation, and also in some of our in our framing as well. And in the building envelope, windows are a huge opportunity for heat loss and inefficiency. And you may be surprised, but we have only one area of the building where we decided to use triple pane windows, or triple pane fenestration. And going back to the energy model helped us decide where to do that. In the end, we selected a super airtight, high performance folding glass door. You can see that picture kind of near the top right. That is the one triple pane piece of fenestration, or kind of window door situation in the building. The rest are high performance double pane windows with thermally broken frames, the rest of the windows. And I already alluded to this, but we worked with our building envelope commissioning agent to come and test the building. So to make sure that the focus on insulation and air sealing was going to perform right. So we had window tests and a whole building air tightness test. And that was performed to pressurize the whole building to see how much air leakage there was. On the residential side of things, again, an energy rater would be able to do that on the residential side as well, using the same technology. So in short, a well-insulated and airtight building plays a huge role in energy performance, meeting the energy targets you have, and also can help right-size the mechanical system. So you're not so you don't need as large or largely sized a mechanical system to provide heating and cooling for your building. Okay, so remember to post any questions you have in the chat. Brandy will help and make sure that I get to questions near the end. And looks like we're doing okay on time. So I'm going to keep going. So our pro tip number 4, we need to maximize efficiency to reduce the amount of solar that you need. And we don't want to assume that we have all the room in the world for solar. So you also have to be very careful to design the roof and other structures to with the right orientation, and also access, and being free from things like plumbing vents, etc., so that you have the right amount of space for solar on the project. So here at Utah Clean Energy, of course, we had to have on-site solar and energy storage. So these steps were really critical for our project. We worked with the energy modeler to understand what the energy needs were for the Climate Innovation Center, and that helped us shape how much solar we were going to need to meet our building's energy needs over the course of the year. So our just around 37 kilowatt solar array is designed to power the entire building. And the solar panels were installed. We really had to fit as many as we could in, going back to the point of maximizing the space on your roof. We wanted to fit as many as we could. So they're they're close to flat, but they have a 5-degree tilt. So that helps maximize production while also owing shading on the next row of panels. And again, we had to pack them pretty tight to reach our zero energy goal. There were a couple of times in the project where we had to move a couple of things, conduits or plumbing vents, to accommodate the solar. But that's just what you have to be aware of when you have this kind of a goal. And our solar system includes 70 panels that are bifacial. They're 530 watt panels. We have 54 of the panels are located on the roof. 16 are located on a solar canopy just behind the building to get to our total. And our estimated annual solar generation is a little over 53,000 kilowatt hours. And we really wanted our building to be able to operate at zero energy as much as possible, both day and night. over the course of the year. And so what we did is we installed a Sonnen battery storage system. It's an EcoLynx 100, and it's a lithium iron phosphate battery with, you could see actually there is an incorrect, there's a slight incorrect detail on this slide, I'm just realizing. Our usable capacity, I think, is 90 kilowatt hours, and our nominal power rating, I think, is 30 kilowatts. That's my bad for working with the previous spec. But that tells you a little bit about the battery. It'll be enough. It was sized to be able to power our battery. Power our building. And we've even took care to make sure that in the event of a power outage, when we're not relying on the grid, and it may be like a cloudy winter weekend and we lose power, that the battery has enough capacity to maintain some minimum set points and conditions in the building. Okay, so leaving the realm of operational emissions, it's really important that we all expand our awareness to think about how carbon emissions are embodied in the materials and products that we use to construct buildings today. As I mentioned earlier, embodied carbon accounts for the greenhouse gas emissions over a product's entire life cycle, including extraction and mining, manufacturing, transportation, and even to the end of its life through disposal. And it was really important for us to be aware of this and to use as many materials as possible in the construction of the Climate Innovation Center that had a low embodied carbon footprint. So a few examples of these low embodied carbon materials are pictured here on the screen. These are just a few of them. One thing we did, a lot of you are probably hearing about and maybe even working on mass timber projects. Well, we used wood framing and mass timber for the majority of the structure in our building. There is a little bit of steel because when you see the building, there's a cantilevered section that comes out, and we did use a little bit of steel for that, but the vast majority of the building is wood framing and mass timber. So you can see the picture here on the left of the cross-laminated timber panels. These are large FSC, in our case, certified wood panels that provide the structural support for the roof deck. We also used glue lam beams, which are heavy duty. You can see those kind of horizontally, kind of on that left picture. That's a horizontal beam that is glue laminated wood that are highly structurally sound. And we also use wooden posts throughout. As I mentioned, we did also salvage wood from the original building to use in non-structural framing and blocking. The two other pictures here show the recycled content tile that was used in the bathrooms and also the break room kitchen area. They're 40% recycled content. And then we selected a pretty impressive paper-based countertop called Paper Stone, which is also a highly recycled material. For our last pro tip number 6, don't overlook the emissions from how people get to your building. Depending on the certification, some certifications for zero energy or zero carbon also include accounting for this. Ours didn't, but we wanted to account for it anyway, so that we wanted to be aware of how folks are getting to our building and do what we can to reduce emissions. So from the very earliest design conversations, we knew we wanted to encourage our staff and guests to use low and zero emission transportation options. And these included a few things. First, our building, we went with an existing building, so we had to figure out, well, what are the options for folks to get to this particular site? One of the reasons that this site was a good fit for us was because it's very close to a major bus line and tracks lines downtown. And that makes it easy for our staff and visitors to use public transit. We're also, as an organization, working on finalizing an incentive program to make it easier for our staff to use mass transit regularly. There was a unique situation with our building where the normal parking required for a building of our size with the square footage and the use would have actually required a number more parking spaces. Being an existing site that was constrained and we were adding a second story, the proximity to transit and some of the other things that we're doing to encourage folks to not drive single occupancy vehicles allowed us to get a variance from Salt Lake City for the minimum parking requirements. The second thing we did on top of where a building's located and really encouraging mass transit is we wanted to make sure it was convenient for folks to park a bike if they travel to the office by bike. So we have 3 bike rack stations. We have one in the front, we have one in the back that also has power for recharging e-bikes, and then we have a spot inside the building in the back vestibule for staff to come in and hang their bikes up, especially for those who have really, really nice bikes. We wanted to have a place inside for that. And lastly, we really had to make sure that for folks who do drive to the building, we wanted to make it easy for those folks to drive electric vehicles. So we have 3 level 2 EV chargers, as well as 3 just 110 volt outlets at each charger, which allows level 2 charging for 3 vehicles, and also just a short kind of a long-term trickle charge, say over the course of a whole day. We also thought about we also wanted to include those so that if there is a power outage, there was a way for folks to charge a vehicle or other things outside, powered off our solar system and battery. So it's a really great feeling to know that the transportation associated with our building will be low carbon, active transportation using mass transit, or having our vehicles and our bikes powered by the sun. And I'll pause there. I just shared a lot of information and pretty quickly. And so now it's time for audience Q&A and discussion. So thanks for your attention, and I hope there's been some questions coming in, and I look forward to answering any questions and all questions that I can.
Thank you, Kevin. Nicely done. I've got several questions for you, and we'll dive in. I am going to just offer one real world example of what you were just talking about. As the communications director, I don't dive into the technical side, but for the homeowners and the developers in the room, I think you might relate to this, that I can say, as Kevin was talking about the building envelope commissioning agent and how vital they are, I happen to have been on site, this was many months ago, doing a filming segment, and I met with one of the vendors that was installing the windows, and they didn't know I was with Utah Clean Energy. And so the pro tip I would add on to what Kevin said is you can order ultra energy efficient high performance windows, but they still have to be installed correctly. And the vendor, not knowing I was with Utah Clean Energy, kind of let it slip of like, they're going a little too far. They're going above and beyond what's normal. And but the building commissioning agent knew to catch what would have been what would have caused an air leakage. So I cannot emphasize enough what Kevin said of that building envelope commissioning agent really saved the day on like countless areas. So that's just my little addition. But let's dive into some questions. So I'm going to start with a very popular question that we've been getting almost daily on our website, which is from JP. When will Utah announce the electrification rebates from the IRA for residential customers?
That is a great question, and JP, thanks for asking, and that's top of mind for all of us here at the office as well. And unfortunately, I can't say exactly when, but the good news is that we're in conversation with staff at the state's Office of Energy Development, and checking in with them, monitoring the status regularly, giving them our support and ideas. What we understand is that the state of Utah is waiting for approval from the U.S. Department of Energy to receive their first little bit of tranche of funding. So the state's already applied for a little bit of this funding, and that funding will be used for the state to really ramp up their planning and finalizing and issuing an RFP to hire implementation contractors who will actually do the heavy lifting for the state. So they're waiting for the green light from DOE to actually get those funds transferred to the state so they can then post those requests for proposals for firms to help the state of Utah implement the programs. So we don't have a hard time frame yet, but the good news is that the program seems to be moving forward.
Awesome.
And and just another point, I'm really confident based on the conversations I've had with the state that it'll continue moving forward, and getting across that first line, getting this approval from DOE is going to be important to keep things moving forward after that.
And I'll quickly note that on that topic, there was a question from Nick asking if the building is all electric, and yes, it is. It is an all electric building, correct, Kevin?
It is an all-electric building. I don't have a picture on the slide deck, but the building was previously serviced with gas for water heating and space heating. And I mean, it was important to us to really show the example of like that. I mean, fossil fuels have gotten us far, but we have all the technology and the know-how that we need to move off of direct fossil fuel combustion and fossil fuel combustion upstream at the power plants, etc. So yeah, we disconnected from the gas system. There was a modest fee, and you can still see the stub that's been capped and everything, but you can still see that on site. So if folks want to come out for a tour and go on a treasure hunt to try to find it, and you find it, let me know.
I like the treasure hunt idea. We're gonna do that. So I have a couple questions related to solar. Don asks first, why did we choose bifacial panels for the roof mounting?
A good question. We were lucky enough to work with a solar industry partner who donated the panels. And we were really excited about bifacial panels because they do increase production just a little bit. It probably won't have a measurable impact on the roof, but you can't really see it because I don't really have a great picture. I mean, you can't see on this rendering in the back, the solar canopy in the back is actually fairly high, and it's a light colored parking lot. So we haven't modeled this, but I would imagine that there's going to be a little bit of extra solar generation on the underside of the canopy. So it maximizes output just a little bit. And we were lucky enough to have that as an option with our solar partner who was part of the project.
That actually leads me to a question from Mitch, which you've touched on, but more with the canopy. He mentions with a 5% tilt, how much light is there to gather on the back side of those panels?
Good question. And I do not have the credentials to answer that. I wish I did. I don't know if anybody else has some ideas to share. I know that we have one person from our staff who has a lot more solar cred than I do, but not to put them on the spot. I wish I could answer that question, but I just can't. We were really just focused on, we wanted there to be some tilt. Well, I already said what our focus was. But yeah, great question.
Hey, Kevin, this is Scott Jones. We helped, we installed the solar up on the roof there with Creative Energies. And
Thank
I
you,
can
Scott.
chime in on that. Yeah. So bifacial panels are awesome. 5-degree tilt on a white membrane roof probably isn't going to produce much. If they were up a couple feet off of the decking of the roof, you'd probably see some what we call albedo reflection gain off of the rear side. But certainly you'll see a gain of, I don't know, 10 to 15% or so off of the carpet, off of the rear side.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
Hope that's helpful. You bet.
All right, I'm going to switch gears a little bit, Kevin. Let's talk about heat pumps. Can we talk a little? We want to clarify. Is that me?
I am going to mute.
Better?
No offense if I mute you. It's if I find just something like that happens, I'm gonna just find the mute button and mute you real quick.
Phew, okay, so let's talk about air sort. Talk about hot water. Peter asked, did we use air sort heat pump tank or a heat exchanger? And are there any available rebates yet? Okay,
so yeah, the HVAC system, the mechanical system, as well as water heating it's not something I talked about because there's so much to talk about, but I'll just give you a quick overview to answer that question. Thanks for the question, Peter. We went with a oh man, there's so much terminology that I'm learning about. In short, our mechanical system is a heat pump. It's a variable refrigerant flow system. It does use heat pump technology, I should say. It's a variable refrigerant flow. So there's no gas providing heating, and we have, I think it's 13 interior fan coil units that take refrigerants from 2 branch circuit controllers inside of the building, and they receive they're served by 2 kind of a paired condensing unit on the roof. Also on the roof is our dedicated outdoor air system, and that is the system that provides mechanical ventilation to the building. And it was designed to pair and work really well with the VRF heat recovery unit, I think is what it's technically called. Part of our DOAS, or dedicated outdoor air system, includes an energy recovery ventilator. So as we're exhausting air from inside the building to bring in new fresh air, we're capturing the heat in the wintertime before that air is exhausted. And inverse in the summertime, we're capturing the cool from inside the building before the air is exhausted and hot air is brought in. So that's a really high level overview of the mechanical system. There are rebates available for these kind of high performance systems. We participated in an incentive program from our utility, Rocky Mountain Power, that wasn't specific to each individual component. It was a whole building incentive program, which I encourage everyone to learn about. It's called the Whole Building New Construction Program. I can give a whole half an hour talk on that in and of itself, but I won't. But that provided incentives for maximizing overall energy performance, including building envelope, energy modeling, and the mechanical system efficiency. On the water heating side, we installed a hybrid heat pump water heater. So hybrid meaning that it can operate in heat pump mode, or if we needed it to, backup electrical resistance mode. It again is not a gas combustion heater, but it is a storage water heater that's a hybrid. Can't remember the make right now, but yeah, it's a heat pump water heater.
Awesome, Kevin. I have to say, I find it so impressive that you know all of that information right off. You're not using notes right now on the heat pump information. You just know it so well. It's pretty incredible.
Thanks.
We have a really good question that I'd love to touch on, which was, what was done to reduce water consumption in the building?
Great question. We spec'd low flow fixtures. We were hoping in the very beginning in our dreaming stage that we could do a very comprehensive gray water and rain catchment system, but due to a number of factors that didn't work out. But we have efficient water fixtures throughout the building, and the landscaping we have is all drought tolerant on a smart irrigation control system to get the plants established. We won't need to irrigate very much at all once the plants are actually established in the next couple of years. But the plants themselves they're not necessarily native, but they're native-ish. They're regional. They're cousins to native plants, and they're highly water resistant, drought resistant, low water, very water wise. And the landscaping is also pollinator friendly. We went with a number of native-ish plants that insects and also birds, birds will love. So,
yeah, thank you. I have 2 questions, one from Nick, one from Marilyn, that kind of get to the same point, which is, how do you recommend homeowners or building owners find experienced architects with zero emissions in mind? The same goes for contractors, mechanical, plumbing. And then Nick kind of gets to, if you don't have a commissioning agent as part of your project, are there any resources to make sure that those vendors and subcontractors are able to achieve zero energy?
Okay, so that was a lot. Those are a lot of really good questions. I want to start kind of with the last one first, but I'm going to take a little bit of a tangent and say one thing I didn't mention when the question came up about the HVAC system, our mechanical system, is we have actually 2 commissioning agents on the building. One is our building envelope commissioning agent, and one is our systems commissioning agent. So our systems commissioning agent did a lot of the same things as our building envelope commissioning agent did on the building envelope, but on our mechanical system. So they were kind of our eyes and ears monitoring design and construction and reviewing submittals and then doing site observation reports about how the construction was going, because just like the building envelope, the mechanical system has dozens and dozens and dozens of small details that need to be done right. So I want to make sure everyone is aware. We had two commissioning agents, one on the mechanical side and one on the building envelope side, and both are critically important. They are invaluable partners to make sure that the details are being followed. I don't have resources top of mind, but this is something that, based on the question that you asked, this is something that we could consider putting online, is resources that are kind of not do it yourself exactly, but guides that you might follow to help you know where to look and know what to look for if you don't have a building envelope commissioning agent. I would say, if at all possible, it's probably, well, there's probably things at any stage in the construction process that bringing in a building envelope commissioning agent, that they would still be beneficial, even if you aren't able to bring them in at the very beginning. So I guess that's my, probably not too satisfactory answer about what to do if you don't have a building envelope commissioning agent. Brandy, I didn't capture some of the first parts of the question. I don't know. I think there may be one or two parts that I missed.
Well, I think there was any recommendations of how to find experienced architects.
That's right.
Mechanical. So I think you have touched that. And I will note that partner David Griffin posted in chat that he might have some suggestions, and he posted his email for those that might want to get in touch with him.
I will also say that I don't have a link to share, but this is something we can also put on our website. But if you, and I can't remember the terminology exactly right now, but AIA, which is the American Institute of Architects, and there's state chapters. AIA has a pledge where architects who are committed to helping their clients achieve low carbon or zero carbon projects, that they take this pledge, and they are identifiable on the AIA website. So I would Google around, and sorry, I don't have the name handy, but go to the AIA website and find that, and find the list of architects across the country, and you can look at them by state, I believe, who have signed that that climate pledge, and they'd be a great place to start to look for architects with some know-how and commitment on these kind of projects. And then another place I would look is on kind of in terms of other contractors and other professionals. The Rocky Mountain Power Whole Building New Construction Program, as I mentioned, is a project, or is an incentive that we've taken advantage of for this project, and it started at the very beginning, even before energy modeling. And they have a list of vendors by specialty. You can even find energy modelers and other contractors. That wouldn't be a source for architects, list of architects, but that would be a source for other professionals. And it's called the Rocky Mountain Power WattSmart Vendor Network.
So I think we have time for about 2 more questions. I'm going to quickly answer one, which is absolutely, we will be sending this PowerPoint out, not today, but in the next few days, to all of our RSVPs. And in that, we can include some helpful links. I've taken note of the rebate reference that Kevin has made. And that gets me to one of the questions, Kevin, is if we can send it, we will, which is a copy. There was a question if we can send a copy of the energy modeling charts we used.
I don't know. That's a good question. I'll have to, I mean, why don't the person who's curious about that, why don't you send me an email or give me a call, and tell me more about what you're looking for, and I can see if we have something that meets your needs. Okay.
And then this final question, but again, if I missed any of your questions, or you don't feel like we answered it, you feel free to unmute yourself. But the final question, this kind of touches on the bigger picture of the Climate Innovation Center. It's going back to the solar a little bit, but it's a zero energy building with solar. Are the solar panels feeding the grid, or is it independent from the grid? And if you want to talk a little bit about the grid relationship.
That's a great question. So our building is grid connected. We are not, we're not free of the grid. We kind of big picture, our Utah Clean Energy's vision is that our built environment becomes highly energy efficient and every home and building become what we like to call good grid citizens. So, or good grid actors. So we want our building to be, you know, overall over the course of a year, generally energy independent because we're producing all the energy we need through on-site solar. But our building, our battery will be part of a system that will help the grid be more resilient and responsive to all the complexities that exist within the electric grid. So our battery will actually be enrolled in a program called the WattSmart Battery Program, and the utility is calling they call them, well, I won't get into the details, but they make use of the capacity that buildings have on the electric grid and to help the grid respond more efficiently and quickly to changes across the electric grid. So the distributed batteries throughout a utility service area can help the grid be more resilient and more flexible, especially as we bring on more renewables. So that's one of the big reasons we wanted to stay connected to the grid, is because we want this building to be part of that future vision of all buildings contributing to a flexible grid. Our building will first take power from the battery, which takes power from our solar, and that's how the building will operate. And then when the sun's down or when it's ultra cloudy, then we'll rely on the battery for power. And then when needed, we'll pull power directly from the grid. But over the course of the year, our net electricity generation on site from clean solar energy will be at least as much as our electricity consumption, if everything goes right. So that's the plan. And we won't really know how that plays out for about a year, because we're going to be, as soon as we move into the building and get all of the equipment really dialed in, we'll start our period of performance. Internally, we want to know that we are net zero, zero energy according to our certification, but also the two certifications that we're using require actual data to demonstrate that we've met those standards. So the certification from the International Living Future Institute, will be collecting the data and sharing with them. And then also that will be required to get our Energy Star certification as well.
Quickly, Kevin, I want to make sure I get this right. Can you repeat the name of the whole building program where you can find the resources? Yes. What is that again?
Yeah, so it's Rocky Mountain Power. It's in their WattSmart program. It's called Whole Building New Construction. At least that's what it was called recently. Yeah, whole building new construction. If you Googled whole building new construction, Rocky Mountain Power, you'll be able to find it. And their team there are great. We, as I mentioned, we worked with an independent energy modeler, and it was a great experience. For folks who are brand new to this kind of a process, the Rocky Mountain Power whole building new construction program also can do a free, simplified version of an energy model that will be sufficient to make you qualified for that incentive program. Importantly, if you do an energy model and want to take the federal 179D tax deduction, which is a federal tax incentive for commercial buildings, the energy model will need to be capable of using a baseline that is required through the federal commercial building tax deduction, which is the ASHRAE 2007 as the building baseline. So that's a little bit in the weeds, but I'm sure a number of you on the call will be familiar with some of those details, and that's an important element which we worked with our energy modeler to do as well.
We're just about out of time, but did I miss any questions, or are there any questions that we didn't quite cover for anybody? Randy has his hand up.
Like Randy?
Go ahead and unmute.
Hi, so I was just wondering if you've talked a lot about active solar. Could you talk about passive solar?
Yeah, so we would have, if we would have designed the building from ground up in a site of our choosing, we would have been able to do a lot with passive solar heating and cooling. Given that we were working with an existing site, our opportunity for really leveraging passive solar for heating or for just passive ventilation was pretty limited. Really. I mean, we have a building immediately south of us that is almost as tall as our building. So we are pretty well shaded. And then in the front of the building, which faces west, we took care to really kind of from the passive or kind of solar kind of one aspect of passive solar kind of issues is making sure that we're not getting too much solar gain in places that we don't want it, which could create, which could heat up the building more than we need. So to deal with that, we have this terrace on the west side of the building, which provides a good overhang. And then we also installed custom-made slide structures that we'll be able to kind of move to block out some of that incoming solar radiation. So I unfortunately can't say a lot of what we did for to really optimize passive solar design because we didn't really have a whole lot to work with because of the existing site.
Good question. Are there any other questions that the group has that we didn't get to? Awesome. Well, as a reminder, we will be sending out this PowerPoint. Stay tuned for a dedicated website, climateinnovationcenter.org, that will be outlining all of the details of this building and how you can follow suit. And if you haven't already done so, I invite everybody today to please RSVP to join us next week, next Wednesday, June 5th, for the grand opening, open houses, to see the building firsthand. And with that, I'll just thank Kevin Emerson once again. Did you have something to add, Kevin?
I just want to say thanks to everyone for joining. This has been a really interesting journey to take, the policy ideas and concepts and theories and work and turn it and work with the team to actually construct a building. And we've learned a lot, and I really appreciate everyone taking the time to join in and learn a little bit about what we learned. And we hope this will be a showcase building that you can continue to learn from. Yeah, we look forward to seeing folks next week at the open house.
All right. Thanks again, Kevin. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Have a great rest of your week.
Great job, Brandy.
Thanks, David. Thanks for joining. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for joining.
Thanks all. Kevin, did you by chance already stop recording? Because I can't. There we go.